In the year 1929, the United States Congress welcomed its first African-American member of the 20th century. His election brought an end to a 28-year institutional silence, a period where no Black representative had a voice in the nation's highest legislative body. That man was Oscar Stanton DePriest, the architect of modern Black representation. These were the words of Congressman DePriest spoken from the floor of the House of Representatives, and they really frame the central conflict of his entire political career, a direct, unyielding challenge to federal segregation coming from inside the very institution that was upholding it. To truly understand the man, you have to understand his journey. It was a path that began in the violence of the post-Reconstruction South and was forged in the industrial centers of the North. DePriest was born in 1871 in Florence, Alabama. Now, his parents had been enslaved and they were active in the Republican Party during Reconstruction. But in 1878, something happened that changed their lives. A 7-year-old Oscar discovered the body of a lynched neighbor, and his family knew they had to flee. They joined what was known as the Exoduster migration to Salina, Kansas, looking for safety and a chance at education. By 1889, DePriest himself had moved on, this time to Chicago, drawn by the promise of economic independence. It was in Chicago that DePriest began to systematically build the financial and political foundations for his rise to national prominence. His strategy was, well, it was both pragmatic and controversial. So DePriest became a successful contractor and a real estate broker. He used a practice that would later be called blockbusting. What he did was, he'd purchase properties in all white areas and then sell or rent them to the growing number of African-American families arriving during the Great Migration. This strategy, you see, it did two things at once. It directly challenged residential segregation and, just as important, it gave him the financial independence he needed to operate outside the complete control of the city's political machines. And then we come to the year 1915. This year marks his first major institutional breakthrough. In 1915, Oscar DePriest was elected to the Chicago City Council. He became the city's very first African-American alderman. This victory was a clear demonstration of the growing political power of the Black electorate on the city's South Side, a power that DePriest himself had been instrumental in organizing. After making his mark in city politics, an opportunity arose. A vacancy in Illinois' 1st Congressional District in 1928 gave DePriest an opening to ascend to the national stage and to finally fill a long-standing historical void. 28. Think about that number. For 28 years, ever since George H. White of North Carolina left office in 1901, not a single African American had served in Congress. So DePriest's election wasn't just a personal victory. It was the re-entry of Black people into the national political conversation. When he arrived in Washington, D.C., DePriest, who was a man of very commanding physical presence, understood the immense weight of his position. Yes, he was the elected representative of his Chicago district, but in reality, he was the symbolic representative for 12 million African Americans who were, for the most part, disenfranchised across the nation. Congressman DePriest didn't limit his advocacy just to legislation. No, he engaged in direct, very public confrontations with segregation at the highest levels of the federal government. Take 1929, for example. The First Lady, Lou Hoover, invited DePriest's wife, Jessie, to the traditional White House tea for congressional spouses. This simple invitation caused a national uproar. Southern state legislatures actually passed resolutions condemning it. To avoid a boycott, the First Lady ended up holding a separate, smaller event for Mrs. DePriest. Through it all, Oscar DePriest publicly and forcefully defended his wife's dignity, stating that she was entitled to the exact same respect as any other congressman's spouse. Then, in 1934, he challenged segregation inside the Capitol itself. When his secretary, Morris Lewis, was denied service in the public house restaurant, DePriest immediately introduced a resolution demanding an investigation. Of course, the resolution was stalled in committee, so he used a procedural tool called a discharge petition, and he secured the 145 signatures needed to bypass the committee and force a vote on the House floor. Now, the House did vote to form an investigatory committee, but that committee deadlocked right along party lines, leaving the policy in place. The fight, however, put the institution of congressional segregation on the national record for all to see. Beyond these symbolic confrontations, DePriest pursued a clear legislative agenda. One aimed squarely at dismantling the legal and economic structures of Jim Crow. His most significant legislative achievement was probably an amendment to the 1933 bill that established the Civilian Conservation Corps, a major New Deal program. The DePriest Amendment, as it came to be known, wrote anti-discrimination language directly into federal law, and that provided a crucial legal tool to challenge racial bias in federal employment. But as the data shows, there's often a large gap between the law and the reality of its practice. While the DePriest Amendment was federal law, its implementation was uneven. Black enrollment in the CCC was officially capped at 10% to reflect the national population, but by 1934, actual enrollment was only at 6%. It just goes to show you the profound limits of legislation when faced with entrenched systemic bias. And DePriest's legislative agenda was broad. He introduced federal anti-lynching bills, which were consistently blocked by the Southern Democratic bloc. He proposed monthly pensions for former slaves over the age of 75. He pushed for changes in trial venues to ensure fair trials for Black defendants, and used his power to nominate Black cadets to West Point. Each of these efforts, even when they failed, laid critical groundwork for future civil rights legislation. DePriest's congressional career came to an end in 1934. His defeat wasn't just the loss of a single election. It was a signal of a fundamental realignment happening in American politics. You see, as a fiscal conservative, DePriest opposed many of President Roosevelt's New Deal programs. He saw them as a federal overreach. His Democratic opponent, Arthur W. Mitchell, on the other hand, fully embraced them. This difference really defined that 1934 election. DePriest's strategy had always been one of direct confrontation with segregation, while Mitchell favored a more gradual, coalition-based approach. Mitchell's victory over DePriest was therefore a watershed moment. It marked the election of the first African-American Democrat to Congress, and it symbolized a historic shift of Black voters away from the Republican Party of Lincoln and toward the Democratic Party of Roosevelt, a shift driven by the economic realities of the Great Depression. Though his time in Congress was limited to 3 terms, Oscar DePriest's tenure was the essential spark. He restored Black representation to the U.S. Congress right in the middle of the Jim Crow era. He proved that a Black constituency could elect a representative who would, in turn, challenge the nation's conscience. He laid the institutional groundwork that others would build upon. And his career really forces us to ask, how does the struggle of a single pioneering voice in government echo through the fight for civil rights for generations to come? The precedent had been set, the silence was broken.